They sold her beside the church steps for less than the cost of a mule. No shoes, no goodbye, just a contract and a crooked smile. But fate doesn't ask permission. When a quiet rancher with nothing left but grief and good hands took her in, nobody expected much. Not even her. She didn't speak, she didn't run, she just survived. This is the story of how a silenced girl became a woman with her own land, her own name, and a family she never thought she deserved. Because in the Wild West, survival is just the beginning. The preacher's voice cracked as he read the final line. Not from emotion, there was none in his voice, but from heat and dust and too many days doing things that sat heavy on a good man's conscience. Let it be known, the girl is to be kept in safe and domestic conditions, under the protection of Mr. Ellis until such time as her maturity and usefulness warrant otherwise. The wind moved through the churchyard with a hiss, lifting skirts and tugging at hats. No one spoke. No one looked directly at her. Elodie Quinn stood barefoot in the dirt beside the man they called Bo Ellis. Her dress was too big at the shoulders, the sleeves threadbare, and the pale blue bonnet on her head drooped in the heat. She did not raise her chin. She did not look at the preacher, not at the dust-caked faces watching from the steps of the general store, and certainly not at the wagon driving away in the distance, where her father sat slouched and her mother, if she was there, didn't turn back once. Bo Ellis didn't say a word. He just nodded once, short and quiet, and held out the paper the preacher had handed him. The crowd broke apart like mist. There was no applause, no farewell, just the whisper of a contract exchanged in broad daylight and a girl without shoes. They didn't speak the whole way back to the ranch. Elodie sat stiff in the wagon, hands folded, eyes on her lap. She didn't ask where they were going. She already knew. Wherever it was, it wouldn't be worse than where she came from. That bar had been set low and buried deep. Bo drove steady, hands light on the reins. Every now and then, he glanced over at her, but never long. Not in that way. His cabin sat 2 miles west of the town, past the dry riverbed and the line of scrub pine that marked the end of the trail and the beginning of no one else's business. The place was quiet. No smoke from neighbors, no sound of children playing. Just wind and wheat and the steady creak of the wagon wheels. When they pulled up to the porch, Bo climbed down first. He reached for the satchel of supplies behind the seat, then offered her a hand. She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers were cold despite the heat. Bo didn't hold on long. He simply helped her down, then turned and walked up the steps. He didn't gesture, didn't explain, but the message was clear. She followed. Inside, the cabin was clean but sparse. One main room, a small kitchen in the corner, a bed against the far wall with a handmade quilt folded tight, a shelf with 4 books, a window cracked open just enough for breeze but not dust. He pointed to a door beside the hearth. Bathroom. Water's cold unless you heat it. She nodded once. He set the satchel on the counter, opened a cupboard, pulled out a clean cup, and filled it from the pitcher. Thirsty? She didn't answer. He set it on the table anyway. Then he stepped back. Elodie didn't move for a long time, just stood there, one hand still clutching the strap of the small bag she'd carried. Her only possession. A comb, a cracked mirror, a needle and spool of thread. She looked around slowly, not like someone inspecting a room, but like someone trying to remember how to stand without bracing. Bo watched her for a second longer. Then he said, "You can have the bed." She blinked. "I'll take the cot on the porch. You lock the door if you want. Or not. Don't matter to me." She opened her mouth. No sound came out. He nodded again, as if she'd spoken, and turned toward the door. Before stepping out, he paused. "I won't ask you anything," he said. "Not unless you offer it." She looked down. "I'm not here to fix you." Then he stepped outside and let the screen door shut softly behind him. That night, Elodie didn't sleep much. She lay on the bed like a guest in someone else's home. She didn't undress, didn't unpack, just stared at the wooden beams overhead and tried not to think about the hands that had pushed her toward this. At one point, she sat up, walked to the door and locked it, then sat back down. She hadn't spoken a word since the sale. She wasn't sure she remembered how. In the morning, Bo was gone. Not far. She could see him through the window, hammering something in the barnyard. A new gate, maybe, or a fence post. He moved with slow certainty, the kind that came from routine, not rush. On the kitchen table sat a folded napkin with a biscuit and a small jar of jam. Next to it, a scrap of paper with 5 words, printed neat, eat what you can. No pressure. She stared at it for a long time, then picked up the biscuit with both hands and ate every crumb. By the 3rd day, she started sweeping. Bo didn't say anything about it, just came in from the field to find her moving the broom in tight, controlled strokes across the floor. He nodded once, grabbed the kettle, and started heating water. By the 5th day, she lit the stove before dawn. Bo walked in, smelled bread, and paused at the doorway. Still, no words, just quiet understanding. It was the 7th day when he asked her name. They were standing at the fence line, watching a mule buck against the post. She'd followed him out with a bucket, her limp barely visible in the tall grass. "What should I call you?" She didn't look at him. He waited. Then she said, voice barely more than a whisper, "Elodie." Bo nodded. "Good name." That night she scrubbed the wash basin until her hands stung. When she finished, she sat on the porch steps, not far from where Bo sat with his unlit cigar. He didn't look at her. She didn't look at him. But when she whispered, "Thank you," the words almost broke the air. He didn't answer, just tipped his head once, like a promise. And for the first time since she arrived, Elodie slept through the night. No dreams, no whispers, just silence. And the sound of someone building something that might one day be called home. On the 8th morning, the wind changed. It came in low and restless from the south, rattling the porch swing and pushing dust under the eaves. Elodie stood barefoot in the doorway, holding a folded dish rag in one hand and the screen door open with the other. Bo was in the field again, sleeves rolled, repairing the fence that bordered the dry creek bed. He worked like he lived, quiet, deliberate, unbothered by the sun or the ache in his back. Elodie watched him for a moment, then stepped outside and sat on the edge of the porch, her feet curled beneath her. The wooden boards were cool against her legs. A dog, an old mutt with one ear bent sideways, lay in the shade beside her. He didn't bark, just thumped his tail once when she settled in. The scar on her neck itched when the air turned. It always did. A pale, curved line just beneath her jaw, like a half-finished necklace made of ash. It showed in full sunlight if her hair wasn't just right. Bo had seen it. She knew he had, but he hadn't asked. Not once. That was something. Later that day, she brought him water. Not because she had to, because it felt right. The tin cup was half full, still cool from the pitcher. She held it out without a word, and he took it just as silently, drank deep, then handed it back. "You patched the far corner too?" she asked, surprising even herself. He nodded. Gate was falling in. She looked out toward the trees, then back at him. "You gonna plant again this year?" Bo shrugged. "Depends." "On what?" He glanced at her. "Whether the ground's still good." Elodie said nothing, but when she turned and walked back toward the cabin, something in her chest had shifted. She didn't know what to call it. Only that it was the first time she'd asked a man a question without bracing for the answer. That evening, the silence between them changed shape. Bo sat on the porch, boots off, back against the wall. Elodie sat on the top step with a basket of thread and a torn curtain she'd found tucked away behind the pantry. The sky bled orange and violet across the horizon. She sewed with slow, careful fingers, each stitch pulling her deeper into herself, and yet farther away from the girl who used to count bruises instead of minutes. Bo whittled something. She couldn't see what, and the scrape of the blade against wood was the only sound for a long while. Then her needle slipped. She winced, dropped the cloth. Bo looked up. "You all right?" She nodded too fast. A bead of blood welled on her fingertip. Bo didn't stand, didn't lurch forward. He just held her gaze, calm as water. "You've done that before," he said quietly. Elodie looked down. "Yes. Still, you keep sewing." "I like fixing things," she said. Bo nodded once. "So do I." The next day she cleaned the window beside the hearth. Not because it needed it, but because something inside her did. She scrubbed until the glass squeaked, until her fingers ached. Then she sat on the floor beneath it and pulled her knees to her chest. A beam of light crossed her lap. The dust in the air moved like memory. From outside came the sound of Bo splitting wood. Steady, grounded, safe. It was that night when the plate broke. She'd just finished drying the dishes. The last one slipped from her hand, shattering across the floor in a spray of ceramic and shock. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The room seemed to shrink. Bo turned from the stove slowly, eyes landing not on the shards but on her. His voice was calm, steady. "We've got plenty of dishes." Elodie didn't move. He reached for the broom. She flinched so hard she nearly knocked over the chair. Bo stopped, stared at her. Then, softly, he handed her the broom instead. Slow, careful. Her fingers closed around the handle. For the first time, her eyes met his. They didn't speak of it, but something broke that night. Not the dish, but the wall between them. The next morning, she was already outside when Bo came back from the barn. She stood near the side fence, holding a rusted hinge and examining it like it was a riddle she meant to solve. "You fixin' to rebuild the gate?" he asked. She shrugged. "Thinking about it." Bo smiled. "Just a little. Let me know if you want help." She turned toward him, expression unreadable, then nodded. That afternoon the sheriff came by, uninvited. He rode up with a half-apologetic smile and the kind of questions that came dressed like concern. "Just making sure all's well out here," he said, reins loose in one hand. Bo offered him coffee, said nothing else. Elodie stood in the doorway, not hiding, but not stepping forward either. The sheriff glanced her way, then glanced away. "Right," he muttered, shifting in the saddle. "Well, let me know if anything changes." Bo watched him ride off. His jaw didn't move, but his hands curled tight around the edge of the porch rail. Later, when Elodie brought him tea, he said, "You don't owe him anything." She looked at him. "I know." That night, she sat closer on the porch, not touching, but close. Bo didn't speak. She didn't either. But their silence felt different now. Not a lack of words, a fullness, like two people sitting inside something stronger than fear. When the wind shifted again and carried the scent of early fall through the cottonwoods, Elodie pulled the quilt tighter around her shoulders and leaned her head against the porch beam. Her voice was barely more than a breath. "My father used to say quiet girls made good wives." Bo didn't move. She looked out at the stars. "I think he just didn't want anyone hearing me scream." The night held its breath. Bo set down the carving in his lap. A bird this time, not yet finished. "You're not quiet," he said softly. "You're just waiting to be heard." She looked at him, truly looked, and in that moment she saw him not just as the man who hadn't hurt her, but as the one who might never. And that was the beginning of something. Not love, not yet, but a kind of safety that could grow, given time and rain, and someone willing to stay through both. The letter arrived on a Thursday, folded once, tucked into the crevice between the front gate post and a rusted nail. No envelope, no stamp. Just a name scrawled across the top in a hand Elodie hadn't seen in almost a year. Her name. Just that. Nothing more. Bo found it while checking the fence line. He held it in his hand like it might burn, thumb tracing the creased fold. When he stepped onto the porch, she was already sitting there. Quiet, still, eyes distant. He didn't hand it to her, just set it on the table between them and waited. Elodie didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at it. Finally, she whispered, "He found me." That night, she didn't sleep. Neither did Bo. He sat in the chair near the front door, one rifle across his lap, another leaning against the wall. The dogs didn't bark, but they paced, restless, tense. Elodie sat curled on the edge of the bed, back pressed against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. "I knew he'd come," she said finally, voice low and flat. Bo didn't look at her. "Who is he?" She hesitated. Then, "His name's Harlan." Bo waited. "He was my father's friend. At least that's what they called it. More like the kind of man who never paid with coin, only with fear." She swallowed hard. My father owed him. A lot. Money, pride, things I didn't understand at the time. Bo tightened his grip on the rifle. I was 13 when he started showing up late, after dark, drunk. Once I tried to lock my door. My father broke it down instead. Silence hung between them, heavy, tangled. I burned him once, she said. Tipped boiling water on his hand. He screamed. My father beat me so hard I couldn't stand for a day. After that, Harlan said I was spoiled goods, but he'd come back someday to collect anyway. She looked up. He has. The next morning, Bo rode into town. Elodie didn't ask why, didn't offer to come. She just stood on the porch, one hand braced against the post, and watched the trail until the dust of his horse vanished into the hills. The storekeeper's son ran up not an hour later, red-faced and out of breath. There's a man camped near the river, he said. Big, one eye gone, scar on his lip. Been asking around. Elodie felt her knees weaken, but she stayed standing, because this time she would not run first. Bo returned late, a storm in his jaw. He's there, he said. Calls himself a legal collector now. Says he's got a claim. Does he? Bo looked at her. Only if you let him. The next 2 days passed like stretched wire. Harlan didn't approach, didn't send word, just waited. Camped by the river with a black horse and a bottle in his fist, sharpening a knife by firelight like patience was a virtue he'd learned too late. Elodie stopped going outside. She sat in the kitchen most days, back to the wall, hands in her lap. Bo kept the rifles loaded, but he didn't pressure her. Not once. He just said, if he comes up this road, he won't make it back down. On the third day, the sheriff showed up. Again, hat in hand this time. Not a greeting, not a warning. Just, he says he's got a contract. Bo narrowed his eyes. From who? The sheriff shrugged. Claims he bought her from her father. Signed document. Says she was never properly transferred to you. Elodie stepped into the doorway, voice clear. I'm not property. The sheriff blinked. No, ma'am, but he's pushing legal language. If he files papers in the next county, might stir something. Bo stepped forward. If the law comes, let it. Just know, this place won't hand her over without a fight. The sheriff looked at Elodie, then at Boulevard, then nodded once and left. He didn't come back again. That night, Bo gave her the shotgun, not the rifle, the shotgun. He said, in case you want them closer when it ends. She stared at it, then took it. The next morning, the rope appeared, hung from the corner post of their fence. A message, a memory, a threat. Bo burned it before she saw, but she smelled the smoke and didn't ask. On the 5th day, she disappeared. Bo found the back door swinging, a trail of bare footprints leading into the wheat. One of the dogs followed them halfway, then turned back whimpering. He didn't hesitate, just saddled the horse and rode hard toward the canyon trail. He found her beneath a rock outcrop 3 miles out, shivering, knees drawn, eyes closed. She didn't move when he approached, didn't flinch when he knelt. He said nothing for a long time, just pulled his coat around her shoulders and sat close. Only when her breathing steadied did she whisper, I thought if I hid, he'd stop looking. Bo said, he won't. I don't want to be hunted anymore. You won't be. Her voice broke. I thought if I was quiet long enough, maybe the world would forget me. He turned to her. I never did. She looked at him, and something in her eyes cracked open. Something he'd been waiting to see. They rode home together. She didn't ride in front. She rode beside him. The cabin felt smaller that night, warmer, brighter. Bo lit the stove. Elodie changed into dry clothes. He handed her a bowl of soup, didn't comment on the way her hands trembled. She ate every bite, then looked at him and asked, will you teach me to shoot? He nodded, and for the first time she smiled without flinching. Just a little, just enough. The man in the canyon still waited, but something had changed. This time the girl wasn't hiding. This time she would choose what happened next. And Bo Ellis? He'd be there, quiet, steady, and deadly if need be. Because some men protected with words, others with walls. But Bo protected with presence. And sometimes that was all a girl needed to become someone new. The man arrived just after Sunday service. Boots dusty, coat too clean, one eye milk blind, the other sharp as a blade. a contract tucked into the inner pocket of his vest, and a grin on his face like he already owned the place. Harlan didn't tie his horse at the post like others did. He rode right into the square, dismounted in front of the sheriff's office, and threw the reins like he expected someone else to catch them. He didn't say Elodie's name out loud, but everyone knew why he was there. Bo heard about it from the preacher's wife, who arrived at the cabin with a trembling voice and a pie she hadn't meant to bring. "Thought you should know," she said, setting it down. "He's got papers. Says he's got claim." Bo didn't blink, just wiped his hands on his apron and said, "Where?" "Sheriff's, right now." Elodie stood in the doorway, pale but straight-backed. The rifle rested against the wall beside her. She didn't look away. Bo turned to her. "You want me to go?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then, "No." He waited. "I want to go with you." The town square was too quiet when they arrived. Windows watched them. Doors didn't swing. Even the saloon hushed. Elodie walked beside Bo, chin high, dressed clean. She didn't wear the bonnet. She didn't hide the scar. Harlan stood on the steps of the sheriff's office, hands in his pockets, smile like a shark waiting for blood. "Well," he drawled, "ain't this nice? Brought her right to me." Bo didn't respond. Harlan pulled a crumpled sheet from his vest and held it up. "Transfer of guardianship, signed by her father, witnessed, no one reputable," Bo cut in. Harlan shrugged. "Still holds weight." Elodie stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "It doesn't hold me," Harlan sneered. "You're still just a girl." "I'm a woman now," she said, "and I choose not to belong to you." Gasps flickered through the crowd. The judge's wife turned her face away. The blacksmith nodded, just once. The sheriff stepped between them. "She's married to Mr. Ellis. The preacher signed the book." Harlan's grin widened. "Convenient, isn't it? You buy her, hide her out here, now claim you wed her just to keep her." Bo stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "I didn't buy her." "Then why's she here?" Bo looked at Elodie. "Because I gave her a place, and she chose to stay." Harlan laughed. "The contract says—" Bo cut him off. "You want a contract?" He pulled a folded paper from his own coat, held it high. "This ranch is in her name now. Deeded. Witnessed. Filed." He looked at the sheriff. "Let it be known, what's hers is hers, and what's mine," he turned back to Elodie, "is only if she wants it." The crowd went still. Even the wind held its breath. Harlan's smirk faltered. "You really think a piece of paper makes her clean?" Bo's jaw clenched. "She was never dirty." "You think you can erase what she's been?" "I think she already did." Elodie didn't look at Harlan. She looked at the townsfolk, at every woman who turned away, every man who whispered and waited. Then clearly she said, "You all saw it, and did nothing. You left me where he found me, and now you'll watch me leave him behind." Harlan spat on the ground. "You'll regret this." Bo stepped in front of her. "No, I don't think she will." The sheriff took the papers, said nothing. The crowd stepped back. And Harlan? He looked around, saw no support, no backup, just dust, shame, and a girl he couldn't control. He mounted his horse and rode out fast. No one followed. That night it rained, hard and sudden, pounding the roof like applause. Elodie stood on the porch, one hand braced on the beam. Bo brought her a cup of tea. She didn't take it at first, just stared at the horizon, then said, "Thank you." He set the cup down beside her. "You did it." She looked at him. "I didn't run this time." "No," he said, "you didn't." The next morning she dug up the old dress, the one her father gave her before he sold her, still folded in a box beneath the bed, still smelling of mold and sweat and shame. She didn't cry. She just carried it to the fire pit and struck the match herself. Bo watched from the porch, not asking, not stopping. The flames reached high, then low, then gone. Later she found him near the barn. "You trust me now?" she asked. Bo looked up from the saddle he was mending. "I trusted you the moment you didn't ask me to." She stepped closer. "I want to stay." "You already have." She swallowed hard. "Not just the house, the land." The name Bo stood, dusted his hands, met her eyes. "Then we build it together." And she nodded. Not like a girl being given permission, but like a woman giving herself purpose. Spring came late that year. It tiptoed across the hills with wind-soft mornings and nervous blooms, the kind that hesitated to open. But when it came, it stayed, and so did she. Elodie's hands, once cautious and curled, were now calloused in places they never had been before. Thumb, knuckle, wrist. Soil worked itself into her skin, beneath her nails, behind her ears. She didn't mind. She asked for a plot behind the cabin, not for flowers, for food, roots, things that would stay in the ground and grow. Bo built her a fence without needing to be asked. He hammered each post steady, ran the wire with care. Elodie painted the gate pale blue. It dried unevenly in the sun, but she smiled at it like it was the prettiest thing she'd ever seen. She named it hers, not in whispers, out loud. They didn't talk much during those first few weeks of planting. There was rhythm instead, Bo with the horses in the barn, Elodie with the seeds in the earth. Some days they worked side by side, exchanging nothing but glances. Others they moved in and out of each other's space like music. Quiet, comforting. One afternoon she caught him watching her from the porch. She had her skirt tucked at the knees, sleeves rolled, hair tied back with a length of cotton string. She was crouched near the carrots, brushing dirt aside with careful fingers. When she looked up, he didn't look away. Neither did she. She smiled first. That time he smiled back. They started eating dinner at the table. Together. Bo even said grace once. Elodie didn't close her eyes, but she listened. And when he whispered, "Thank you for second chances," she reached for her spoon with a steadier hand. One night, a letter came. This time, not from a threat, but from a place long buried. Her mother. The writing was shaky, barely legible, with smudges where fingers must have trembled. Elodie read it alone, at the table, long after Bo had gone out to tend the horses. When he returned, she didn't speak. Just folded the paper, tucked it under the candle and said, "She's in Georgia." Sick. Bo didn't ask more. "She wants me to come." Silence stretched. "I don't know what I want," Elodie whispered. Bo pulled out the chair across from her, sat slow. "You don't have to decide tonight. I don't want to run." "You wouldn't be running," he said. "You'd be returning, only for a minute." She looked at him. "For what?" He thought for a long while. Then, "Closure, if that's what you need." They argued quietly that night, not with raised voices, just tight ones. "She left me," Elodie said. "I needed her, and she let him." "Then maybe she needs to hear that," Bo said. "I don't want her guilt." "Then go take back your voice." She clenched her jaw. "I thought I already had." "You did, but this time, you get to use it for yourself." She left at sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to know what didn't need holding anymore. Bo didn't stop her. He just packed her a bag, handed her the reins, and pressed a small carved sparrow into her hand. "Come home," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I will." The road to Georgia was long and slow. The wagon carried her alone. She rode through places where people didn't know her name, didn't look twice, didn't care that she rode with her spine straight and her mouth closed. At night, she slept under the stars, remembering the crackle of Bo's fire, the way he always set the tin cup down with both hands, as if even routine deserved care. She missed that, more than she expected. When she reached the home, white walls, lemon balm, the sharp scent of antiseptic, her mother was smaller than she remembered, bent, pale, half shadow. "Elodie," her mother rasped, like the name was something she hadn't earned the right to say. "I'm here," Elodie said. The rest came slow. Tears, words, apologies. "I thought if I left, he'd stop. I didn't know how to save you. I failed." Elodie didn't argue. She listened, then said the only thing she'd come to say, "I forgive you." She left 2 days later. Didn't cry, didn't look back. Some doors don't close with sound. They just fade. When she returned to the ranch, the garden had bloomed. Carrots had sprouted. The beans had climbed. Bo had built a new gate. When he saw her riding up the trail, he didn't ask questions. He just met her at the hitching post and said, "Hungry?" She nodded. He handed her a biscuit. She cried into the first bite. Later that night, she said, I want to build something permanent. Bo looked up from the porch swing. You already are. No, she said. I mean real. Walls, rooms, a barn, a kitchen where the window faces sunrise, a place we can pass down. He paused, then smiled. I'll start drawing plans. No, she said, sitting beside him. We'll do it together. And this time she leaned her head against his shoulder, not from fear, from peace. They didn't kiss, not yet, but her hand found his and stayed. The silence that held them wasn't hollow anymore. It was full, of roots, of weight, of the kind of love that doesn't need to be spoken to be real. They started with the roof. Bo said it was the hardest part to build, so it ought to be done first. Elodie said it was the part that kept the rain out, so it mattered most. Either way, they agreed. They built it together, nail by nail, beam by beam. She climbed the ladder with steady hands, passed him the hammer, measured the angle of sunlight for the window she'd been dreaming of. By mid-spring, the kitchen was framed, the walls halfway up, and the door faced east, just as she wanted. She painted the shutters a soft yellow. Bo carved sparrows into the porch posts, her idea. He never said much while he worked, but he whistled now. And sometimes when the sun dipped low and the dogs lay snoring under the steps, he'd hum without realizing it. Elodie never told him. She just smiled when he did. The town, of course, didn't forget who she'd been. The judge's wife still crossed the street when they passed. The mercantile clerk still counted her change like he was weighing sin. And someone, anonymous of course, left a bucket of pig's blood on the cabin steps one Sunday morning. Bo was furious. Elodie just picked it up, poured it out, and never spoke of it. Will they ever let me be? She asked later, her voice low as thunder. No, Bo said, honest. But that's their burden, not yours. And somehow that was enough. The ranch grew. A wandering trader left 2 foals in Bo's care, payment for a repaired wheel and a night of shelter. One was skittish and thin, wouldn't eat. Elodie slept beside him in the hay 3 nights in a row, feeding him warm mash from a bottle until he stood on his own. The other was faster, wilder. He followed her everywhere. She named him Bristle. He acts like he hates everyone, she said, brushing his mane, but he's just scared. Bo watched her stroke the colt's nose. He knew she wasn't talking about the horse. The envelope arrived in early autumn, tucked into the fence slat, no return address, no wax seal. Elodie opened it with steady hands. 1 line, familiar script. You still owe me. H, she read it twice, then folded it in half and laid it on the table. Bo came in from the barn, saw her face, didn't ask. He just waited. Finally, she said, He's not done. Bo nodded once. Neither are we. A week later, Burke Harlan rode into town. Dusty, heavy, older, but still with that crooked grin and coin slot eyes. He stood in the center of Main Street like he owned the sun. Said he had a contract. Again. Said a debt unpaid was still a debt owed. Elodie was in the general store when he called her name loud enough to make the windows rattle. Didn't think you'd still be here, girl, he sneered. Figured you'd crawl off like your mother. Bo stepped out of the saloon. Calm, steady. He didn't touch his gun. Didn't need to. Harlan waved a paper in the air. Your daddy gave you to me. You burned the dress, but not the deal. Gasps rippled through the townsfolk gathered. Elodie stepped forward, not behind Bo, beside him. I was never yours, she said. Not then. Not now. Not ever. Harlan turned to Bo. You gonna let her mouth off like that? Bo didn't blink. She doesn't need my permission, Harlan snarled. You really think that's love? A broken girl and a man too tired to know better? Bo reached into his coat, pulled out a folded deed. This ranch, he said, raising his voice for all to hear, is hers. Not borrowed, not gifted, hers. He looked at Elodie. And so is my name. If she wants it. Silence spread across the square. Even the wind stopped to listen. Harlan scoffed, looked around. No backup, no sheriff to bail him out this time. No whispers behind curtains. Only a town that had finally decided to watch what it once ignored. He spit in the dirt, muttered something about curses and weakness, and rode out in a storm of dust and silence. He never came back. That night, Elodie stood at the edge of the porch, arms folded tight, eyes fixed on the stars. "You meant it," she said. Beau was behind her, stacking firewood. "I meant all of it." "I want the name," she said quietly. He turned. "Yours." She turned to face him. "But I also want mine." He stepped closer. "Then take both." She smiled. A real one. "I will." They married beneath the cottonwood tree where Beau's first wife lay buried. No minister, no guests. Just them, the land, and the long light of late October. He carved her a ring from birchwood. She sewed herself a dress, linen, plain, strong. Her hair was down. She didn't wear shoes. He looked at her like she'd hung the stars. She looked at him like he was finally home. Years passed. The garden grew wild. The ranch doubled. Elodie carved toys out of scrap wood and kept them in a box until the day she didn't. Because their daughter was born in the middle of a thunderstorm. They named her Mara Belle, after Beau's mother, and because Elodie said it sounded like strength wrapped in light. The first time she toddled barefoot through the garden, Bristle walked beside her like a shadow. Elodie cried, not from fear, from awe. One evening when the porch's swing creaked in the breeze and Mara Belle slept sound in the next room, Beau took Elodie's hand. "I still remember," he said, "the day I saw you standing barefoot beside the preacher. Thought you looked like something ready to break." Elodie leaned her head on his shoulder. "And now?" He smiled. "Now I see something that grew where nothing should have. Something that made the dust bloom." She closed her eyes. "I chose this life." "Yes," he said, "but first, you chose yourself." She nodded, and for the first time in her life, Elodie didn't wonder if she was enough. She knew, because she had built something no one could take from her. Not a name, not a man, not even silence, but a home, with her own two hands, and the heart she had never given up on. They said she was a burden, a girl best forgotten, but Elodie chose herself first. Then she chose love. Then she built something no man could burn, a home, a child, a life named in her own voice. And when the man who once claimed her came riding back into town, she didn't tremble. She stood in the sunlight and said, "You don't own me, not even my story." Let us know in the comments. Do you believe true peace is built in silence or in the moment you speak your truth? And if this story moved you, subscribe for more Wild West tales of second chances, fierce women, and the men wise enough to stand beside them.